Hey, Doug, it's Commissioner Bynum. Commissioner Kane was having a problem rejoining that last meeting. I wondered if anybody's working with him.
I do know Bridgette was trying to get him logged on. He
Okay,
got back on as a attendee. She was trying to get him to accept. I don't know if she's still.
okay. I just
We'll
wanted
make
to
sure
check.
we're both in the office together. I'll check with them.
Hello, folks. Did you
No
miss me?
criminal. He's good.
Hello.
Did you guys miss me? I could not do anything.
I missed you, Mike.
I couldn't figure it out. Lord, I apologize. Well, I'm back now.
All right, well, we are live on YouTube and UGTV.
I'm waiting for the lady to speak.
We're live.
No, I know, not you.
Okay.
That's the one. Thank you. Good evening. Before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, many people are attending remotely via Zoom by phone. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak, so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and its current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19 requirements, the public is allowed to participate by Zoom or submit comments by email prior to the meeting. Those comments are included in the record of the meeting. The public also has an opportunity to provide brief comments from the lobby of the municipal office building. I'd ask the clerk to please call the meeting to order and call the roll.
Yes, roll call, Ramirez,
Here.
Johnson. Commissioner Johnson, you're muted. Commissioner Johnson, can you unmute yourself? Commissioner Kane,
Here.
Markley, Walters,
Here.
Philbrook,
Here.
Bynum,
Here.
Burrough,
Here.
Townsend,
Here.
McKiernan,
Here.
Alvey,
Here.
Johnson. I see him, but he's still muted.
So Commissioner Johnson, are you available to give the, provide the invocation? All right, I'll step into the fray. Please join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to serve your people. We ask you to fill us with the gift of wisdom, commitment to your people, so that our decisions might be for the good of all. We thank you this through your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States
of America,
and to the republic
which it stands,
one
one
nation
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
There are no revisions.
Thank you. So we have two parts to our meeting. Planning and zoning handled first, followed by regular commission. I ask the clerk to read the statement required by state law governing the planning and zoning portion of our meeting, followed by the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
We would like to welcome all present to this meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor CEO David Alvey, Commissioner Melissa Bynum, at-large District 1, Commissioner Tom Burrows, at-large District 2, Commissioner Gayle Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian McKiernan, District 2, Commissioner Christian Ramirez, District 3, Commissioner Harold Johnson, District 4, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Markley, District 6. She previously provided notice of her absence this evening. Commissioner James Walters, District 7, and Commissioner Jane Philbrook, District 8. As each petition is called, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before the commission has three options. One, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. Or 3, it can return the matter to the Planning Commission for further consideration, together with a statement specifying the reasons for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the Planning and Zoning agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or others, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on all the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are any requests to set aside items from the consent agenda. This is your time to request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If you've contacted the Unified Government Clerk's office, that item will be set aside by the clerk on your behalf. If an item is not set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted on separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. Most of the petitions before the Commission tonight may be determined by a simple majority vote. However, if protesting property owners representing 20% of the land area within 200 feet of the area in question have signed and filed a protest petition, at least 9 votes by the Commission will be required to approve the change of zone petition. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would, however, remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone or your telephone to please turn them off or switch up non-audio to not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state their views. This is your time to raise your hand. When you have been recognized, you will be asked to state your name and address for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the planning and zoning agenda. At this time, does any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda?
Commissioner Bynum, I'm sorry, Commissioner McKiernan, you were first.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had contact with proponents of SP 2021-052 and contact with proponents of SP 2021-062.
Thank you. Commissioner Bynum.
I've heard from proponents of SP 2021-52 and opponents of SP 2021-52.
Thank you. I see no, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Johnson, you're muted.
Okay, here we, proponents of SP 2021-052.
Commissioner Burrows,
Thank you, Mayor. Proponents of 2021-018, 2021-062, proponents, and proponents for MPL 2021-006.
Commissioner Kane,
Proponents for 21-22-052, SB 062. Both of them proponents.
Commissioner Ramirez,
Proponents of SB 2021-052.
thank you. Commissioner Philbrook,
You are muted, Commissioner.
I'm trying to be muted. So yeah, proponents of SP 2021-052.
yes, and I've had contact with SP 2021-052 and opponents of 2021-052. Thank you. Up, Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you, Mayor. I did miss the 052 also myself, so proponent.
Thank you. Okay, Carol, proceed. Madam Clerk,
You're muted, Carol.
Thank you. As I said while I was muted, I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Under the changes zone applications, item 1, COZ 2021-005, Joe McLaughlin with BHC Roads, change the zone from R1 Single Family District to CPO, Planned Non-Retail Business District, for additional parking and buildings for Providence Medical Center at 8741 Parallel Parkway. Recommended for approval. Item 2, COZ 2021-012, Ray Sawyer, change the zone from R1 Single Family District to AG Agriculture District for horses at 3726 North 47th Terrace. Recommended for approval. Item 3, COZ 2021-026, Marty T. Arling with Caw Valley Engineering, change the zone from R1B Single Family District to AG Agriculture District for a 31-acre urban equestrian sanctuary for both horses and residents who reside and traverse there at 4600 Parkview Avenue and 4551 Sloan Avenue. Recommended for approval. Under special use permit application, item 1, SP 2021-029, Nadia Griffith with Latin Quarters, Inc., special use permit for a drinking establishment with live entertainment at 508 Kansas Avenue. Recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 2, SP 2021-04, Latif Abbas with Zane Commercial LLC, special use permit for liquor sales in conjunction with existing convenience store / gas station at 8537 State Avenue. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 3, SP 2021-045, James Sullivan with Sullivan Palmer Architects, special use permit for auto storage and maintenance building at 1037 South 26th Street. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 4, SP 2021-052, Karina West, special use permit to keep 12 breeding adult ducks at 1921 Nebraska Avenue. Recommended for approval for 2 years for 8 adult ducks. Item 5, SP 2021-65, Adrian Boris with Boris Property Investment LLC. Special use permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 4138 Lloyd Street. recommended for approval for 1 year. Item 6, SP 2021-066, Oscar Flores Ureta, special use permit for a kennel/doggy daycare and boarding operation at 4001 North 74th Street. Recommended for approval for 2 years. Under master plan amendments, item 1, MP 2021-013, Joe McLaughlin with BHC Roads. Master plan amendment from low density residential to public, semi-public citywide master plan at 8741 Parallel Parkway. Recommended for approval. Item 2, MPL 2021-014, Ron Rue for a master plan amendment from low density residential to medium density residential citywide master plan at 609 and 611 South 75th Street. Recommended for approval. Item 3, MPL 2021-015, Ron Rue, master plan amendment from low density residential to medium density residential citywide master plan at 617 and 619 South 75th Street. Recommended for approval. Item D1 is an ordinance amendment to modify section 27, division 5, subdivision 3 of the floodplain district to allow after the fact permitting of structures within the floodplain that conform to the ordinance at the time they were built. Recommended for approval. Under miscellaneous ordinances, item 1, an ordinance rezoning property at 725 North 75th Drive from R1 single family, RP4 planned apartment, garden apartment, and RP5 planned apartment districts to MP2 planned general industrial district. Recommended for approval. Item 2, an ordinance rezoning property at 900 North 69th Street from R1 single family and C1 limited business districts to MP2 planned general industrial districts. Recommended for approval. Item 3, an ordinance rezoning property at 1201 North 98th Street from AG agriculture district to CP3 planned commercial district. Recommended for approval. Item 4, an ordinance rezoning property at 609 and 611 South 75th Street from R1 single family district to R2 two-family district. Recommended for approval. Item 5, an ordinance rezoning property at 617 and 619 South 75th Street from R1 single family district to R2 two-family district. Recommended for approval. Item 6, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit at 204 Orchard Street for continuation of a drinking establishment and live entertainment. Recommended for approval. Item 7, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit at 7852 Leavenworth Road for continuation of temporary use of land to park salt plow trucks. Recommended for approval. Item 8, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit at 1327 Minnesota Avenue for continuation of a parking lot. Recommended for approval. 9, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit at 2003 and a half through 2005 North 5th Street for continuation of live entertainment. Recommended for approval. Item 10, an ordinance vacating an easement at 5917 North 123rd Street. Recommended for approval. And item 11, an ordinance authorizing a special use permit at 1930 South 74th Street for an earthen fill. Recommended for approval. Mayor, those are all the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission, the county administrator, or public wish to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by one vote to follow the recommendation of the planning commission. Ever received any requests from the public to set aside any item?
No items have been received.
Does any member of the commission or administration wish to set aside any item? Being none, is there anybody present or in the call that is signaling?
Commissioner Mike Kane, move for approval.
I want to ask one, thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Hand, you had mentioned that there might be someone who wanted to pull an item.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. I did just notice that someone raised their hand and lowered their hand. It said local citizen. I'm not sure who that is.
Yes, I'm wanting to unmute it to remove.
I'm sorry, who is speaking? Please state your name and address.
So my name is Karina West. I am with special permit application 2021-052. I'm representing myself as a pro se party here.
Are you asking to remove this from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Thank you. All right,
Move for approval for all remaining items, Commissioner Mike Kane.
thank you.
Mr. Brian McKiernan, second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted. That takes us to set aside item SP 2021-052, special use permit to keep 12 breeding adult ducks at 1921 Nebraska Avenue. I'll turn it over to staff for opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Special use permit 2021-052 is for the keeping of more than 6 fowl. As per the zoning ordinance, the applicant had requested 12 ducks. This is in the Northeast Area Master Plan area, specifically in the West Height Historic District along Nebraska Avenue. The applicant had a review with the Conservation District. The Conservation District did visit the site and provide feedback to staff regarding their recommendations. Staff included those as conditions of approval. There are multiple conditions as it relates to the maintenance of the yard, as well as a recommendation for only 8 adult ducks. The number of ducklings, I believe Ms. West raises ducklings and sells them. The keeping of ducklings is not enumerated, so she can have as many ducklings, but those cannot grow to maturity. She's limited to, as per these conditions, 8 breeding pair. Staff recommends approval with 8 ducks and the remainder of Conservation District conditions for 2 years.
Well, Gunnar, the special use permit to keep 12 breeding adult ducks.
That was the request. The conditions of approval based on our reviewing agency of the Conservation District limited that to 8. So staff went along with the Conservation District recommendations for 8, which still requires an SUP.
Thank you. I did not see the next note. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for that. There, I would also just mention, I did hear some regarding this case, proponents and opponents. Up until this point, staff has received no letters of support, opposition, and there are some old NOVs, but very old ones. The outstanding NOV on the property is in relation to the number of ducks on the property without a special use permit, which is the corrective action that we hear tonight.
Thanks. I'd ask Ms. West to present your application. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
May I share my screen? And my name is Karina West at 1921 Nebraska Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas. So.
Has the screen been shared?
I'm working on this settings here. Start video. And share screen. All right, so you can now see my application. I'm Karina West, 1921 Nebraska Avenue. There's only 9 living Olympians in the state of Kansas, and I am one of them. So I'm going to fight to the death here as a gladiator for four ducks. And as I get to my page down here. So these ducks are very rare. Cayugas are the only domesticated duck breed native to North America. If you can see them, part of the fact is that you can't see them, which is why they're good against predators. In this picture, there's actually 1 brown duck, 2 blue ducks, and 5 black ducks. And trying to keep black, brown, and blue together is why this is, in fact, we just got awarded today some money from a department in Kansas who's helping us to preserve the genetics. So the progress of the special permit today, this is a shortening of the conversation for clarity. The city said 8 ducks and not 12 since we don't have enough hydrant plants on site. Okay, so today's request is let's go to 12 ducks and not 8. And everything is all in good around here. So this is a hydrant plant right here. If you can see my pointer, this is a cattail. This is 2 of the brown. This is also a hydrant plant. So a hydrant plant is one that is defined as tolerating dirty water and wet feet. So the roots can be wet. So this is a cattail, this is a Russian sunflower, this is grass back here. So all of that's alive in dirty water. So it therefore by definition is a hydrant plant. Here's 3 more hydrant plants in this photo, cherry, burdock, and there's mulberry trees growing up in this. Here's 2 more hydrant plants on site, grapes. These are a branch of a persimmon tree. This is another, so 3 more hydrant plants on site and some nice ducks. This is locusts. I'm not sure if it's honey locust or black locust. Again, mulberry, and these are purple passion asparagus. And this is a map of the hydrant plants around my house, roughly with the rough estimate of the square footage that they take up. The drainage goes this way or this way, according to my choice. There's quite a few hydrant plants. And what I mean by my choice is that diversion of drainage is a best practice in stormwater management. So if you want to soak up the most water, then you use a best practice in stormwater management. And we have swales, porous concrete, native plants. Here's plans for native plants, a pond, and then the diversion showing that the water can go either way. So we have received positive comments. They have come in orally as I went around and talked to my neighbors. Most of my neighbors didn't know I had ducks. Ducks are quiet. And drakes, the boys are almost silent. So this is a survey monkey we did of people connected with our farm. And what ideas do they like? 83% of them have never seen wetlands in action, building community rare ducks. Most people don't know about grazing education. And because my farm is only 1/4 of an acre, then you can see all of it all at once. And I'll tell you, it's like a mini house. Each little garden bed is 1 acre. And then, so the reason to change the recommendation to 12 ducks is that the city's recommendation of 8 was based on lack of hydrant plants. And I just showed you 12 different kinds, and each of those kinds has many different plants present. So we completed the stormwater management plan they asked for. We completed other steps asked for, and there's not a lot of difference logistically between 8 and 12 ducks. So this is an Olympian-led business. Olympians try harder. Another reason to approve this. level one micro entrepreneurship. So basically all your unemployed folks in Wyandotte County start as micro entrepreneurs, lawnmowers. We've moved, because I'm a good entrepreneur, I've moved it up into a small business where I have 5 employees. And I have already created 106 jobs defined as 1099s that I've issued in the last 10 years. And so when I project 130 jobs in 3 years, that's proven outcomes. And so this is me proven outcomes. And these are current partners helping us develop our approach. This is funders that the entities that I control have received. And I'll tell you, I've worked with federal governments for 10 years. And this local government is a lot harder than all these other state and government entities that have funded me and my businesses in the past. So this, if you're interested in business plan, so bottom line, micro entrepreneurs in Kansas City start in arts, farming, and cooking. And so if it's hard for me as a tiny little business to fight for 12 ducks, it's going to be hard for everyone else in the city that needs to start a business and get employed and transition into the new workforce that we have. So we're opening up our venture accelerator as soon as our landlord gets it fixed up, and that's at Whole Parkway in Minnesota. And we have slots already for 2 micro entrepreneurs to move in, and that's called the hatchery. So that's my presentation on 8 versus 12 ducks.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Ask the clerk if you received any notification from the public who wish to express comments in favor of this item.
No communications were received.
All right. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor? Nobody in the lobby?
No one in the lobby.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Have you received any notification from the public in opposition?
No notifications of oppositions were received.
All right. All right. I will now close the public hearing. Commission, questions or comments? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I think I've finally gotten over my audio or visual or audio challenges tonight, but Mrs. West, thank you for this application and for the work that you're doing in terms of breeding ducks. I appreciate you as a neighbor of the West Tite Neighborhood Association. I am not an expert in this particular area, but just as a matter of practical contemplation on this matter, I was actually pleased somewhat, I guess, that the Planning and Zoning Department would consider increasing the number of ducks allowed at all. And certainly from 6 to 8, I was not one to get into the debate of how many, but I was actually, when I saw the increase or the approval of an increase and that it was unanimously approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, that we would increase it. I actually looked at that as a good compromise. From my perspective, I'd like to see how this goes over the next 2 years, and then we can always make application for more at a later date if in fact we don't have any problems with that. There also have not, though there have not been any oppositions that were submitted directly and formally through the process that we have. I have been made aware of some opposition to this. as well as some of my fellow commissioners. So with that, I certainly am appreciative of the recommendation from staff and what has been approved by our Planning and Zoning Commission, and support that as well. So thank you, Mayor.
Is that a motion, Commissioner?
I will make it a motion. Yes, I know we have another person that has a couple others that have their hands raised as well.
Yes. Commissioner Philbrook?
Yes, I appreciate our planning and zoning folks actually paying attention to recommendations from conservation folks, because in the past, sometimes they've been ignored. And did I hear Commissioner Johnson say that he had not received any opposition to the ducks?
I have not formally, but I am aware of opposition. I'm sorry, but no.
You are
formal.
aware of the opposition. Well, I'm not really aware of the opposition. So is it people that are close by to this location, or just in general?
Mayor, is it appropriate for me to respond?
Sure.
Yes, it is, Commissioner. And I think
So it is
yes,
people close by.
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, well, we have to take those into consideration. That's why we have codes, doggone it. So I agree with you, Commissioner Johnson, that yes, we need to go ahead and limit that. I'm happy to see they went to 8, and I think we need to revisit it in a year or two to see how things are going and to see if all of these changes have been made and how things are looking. And I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors. So thank you for being an entrepreneur.
All right. Is that a second, Commissioner Philbrook?
Sure. Yes, boss, we'll call that a second.
Yes. I see that Ms. West, I cannot accommodate you to make any more comments, unfortunately. There any, if I would direct a question, I will direct a question, Ms. West. No, I will not. I take that back. Sorry. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. We now go to our planning and zoning non-consent agenda. Items A1 and C1 are heard together. A1, change of zone application 2021-018, Cole Anderson, to rezone property from MP-1 planned light industrial and industrial park and AG agricultural districts to MP-3 planned heavy industrial district for a permanent asphalt plant at 1625 South 86th Street. Staff recommended approval. It was voted 7-1. Staff did receive a valid protest petition against this change of zone. So again, Misty, we would need 9 votes, correct?
That's correct, Mayor. In order to approve this application, it would take a supermajority of 9.
Thank you. C1 is Master Plan Amendment MPL 2021-006, Cole Anderson, for a master plan amendment from business park to industrial at 1625 South 86th Street. Staff recommended approval and it passed 7-1. I'd ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. The proposal in front of you is for a asphalt batch plant in the Riverside area. It is at the location of a former asphalt batch plant that was only approved for 2 years in an SUP that ended around 2 years ago, approximately. Staff has reviewed the case and has this is the protest petition and the valid protest petition. Staff has reviewed the case and has multiple conditions of approval, including hours of operation from 7 to 5 p.m. The applicant, who I believe will speak after me, will review additional hours of operation that will obviously, asphalt batch plant will not operate in the winter. We applied additional dust mitigation measures related to the site. I would note that the City Planning Commission also approved a plat. You can see that right here, that maintains an existing 200-foot buffer to the properties and roadways to the west. It also maintains an existing buffer to the north. After the plat, there's a second property that would be created to the north that also has a buffer to residential and agricultural zone properties to the north. Specifically, because this is a change of zone from MP1 to MP3, we did add a deed restriction. As you know, MP3 is our most intensive industrial use. So we didn't want this potential batch plant to end operations and another heavy industrial use to come in. We wanted to specifically restrict it to this very specific use now and in the future. I mentioned the landscape buffers to the north and south. There's sort of an existing buffer just by the change of the grade to the south and east along Caw Drive. Another condition of approval is to create and maintain that existing buffer, some existing tree stands to provide screening. There will be additional landscaping to provide further buffering on Caw Drive. This is sort of at the end of what's kind of turned into its own little small industrial park. There are 2 other industrial businesses on Ruby Avenue. This would be the terminus of Ruby Avenue via the cul-de-sac that the applicant would build. They've decided to move forward with more than just a batch plant. This would include full-time office space for the company. As such, staff has conditioned that office building would meet all commercial design guidelines for the offices of said company. It would also match the similar pedestrian access and landscaping that currently exists for the existing 2 businesses along Ruby Avenue. We did mention the protest petition. We received no letters of support. There were a couple of folks who attended the City Planning Commission to express opposition. Staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Gunnar, I cannot tell from this, on the north side, there seems to be quite a bit of change of elevation. Is that accurate? North side of where the batch plant would be?
Gunnar, you are muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. When this was a temporary batch plant, or before it was a temporary batch plant a few years ago, it was essentially a donation site for earth and fill. So over time, they've basically graded a hole, if you will. So yes, it is lower than to the west and to the east. Essentially, the plat will cut this large parcel in half, and we're only talking about the development of the new southern parcel that was created through the City Planning Commission action. Again, it maintains what is an existing buffer of 200 feet on the west along South 86th Street, as well as to the north of the property, which is a second property now after the lot split, or excuse me, after the plat to the north. So yes, it does sit in a bowl, if you will, and there is quite a bit of distance between it and the adjacent properties. We additionally asked for the maintaining of this tree stand to the south and some additional buffering, a 200-foot buffering here on the south side. You can see that probably a little bit better through some of these other plans.
I see. Thank you. All right. Thank you. I asked the applicant to present his application. Please state your name and address for the record. Carol, is the applicant present?
Mr. Anderson would need to unmute himself, Mayor.
Mr. Anderson? You are muted, sir. He is present, Bridgette?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and we have promoted him over to as a panelist.
Right.
There you go. He's unmuted now. If
Thank
he can
you.
speak.
Yes, Mr. Anderson, please present your application, state your name and address for the record. Mr. Anderson, we're not hearing anything if you're speaking. Can someone reach him by phone? Mr. Anderson, you are present. Please unmute. Give us your name and address for the record.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, we're having trouble with the audio on our computers. Yes, Cole Anderson, Bettis Asphalt and Construction. I am here with Andy Gabbert, who is also trying to raise his hand to talk. We've
Yes,
been
Mr.
working with
Anderson.
staff
We need your
for,
address. Mr. Anderson, we need your address of residency for the record.
okay, 5925 Marion Street, Shawnee, Kansas, 66218.
Thank you.
Okay. We've been working with the staff for several months on this, trying to get recommendation for approval. As you guys know, this site was an existing asphalt plant for a project we did on K32. We had no complaints. We plan on using this site on and off to be able to come and go kind of as we please, as we bid work. Asphalt, you know, there's a season for asphalt. The plant will not be operating in the winter. We will be operating only in the summer months. We have been working with, we held 2 local meetings. We did get some questions about some dust, and we addressed all the dust issues, I felt. And we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Now open the public hearing and ask the clerk if we received any notification from the public who wish to express comments in favor of this item.
No comments were received.
Is there anyone present from the public who would like to speak in favor of this? Seeing no one in the lobby?
Not seeing anyone with their hands raised in the lobby, Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Any notification from the public who wish to express their comments in opposition?
No comments in opposition were received.
All right. Gunnar, would the protest petition, does it qualify as comments in opposition?
This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Effectively, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And again, we did have public comment at the City Planning Commission, which carries over in the minutes as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone present, either virtually or in the lobby, who would like to speak in opposition?
There are no hands raised.
Very good. I'll now close the public hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments? All right, Mr. Anderson, I would then ask Commission questions or comments. Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. Gunnar, could you put up the screen that I think showed the boundaries of the properties that did or did not sign the protest petition? I wanted to understand that better. What the green is a support or non-support?
Non-support.
Green is non-support.
Green is in non-support of the protest petition. So all the Ys are people who said that they are against it.
Okay, so the red are those who signed the protest petition, but it is valid. It covers enough of the required area.
That's right. It's based on area, not number of parcels or number of property owners. So,
Okay.
and the threshold is 20%.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mayor, that was my only question.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more questions, I'd entertain a motion, and we have to bring this in 2 votes. And again, is there a motion for change of zone COZ 2021-018? I'm sorry, Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, just kind of late on the trigger. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. I just had one question about one of the stipulations, stipulation number 5. They were talking about hours of operation would be between 7 and 5. However, it seems to leave the possibility open that there could be work after 5 p.m. I'd be curious as to how often that might happen and what limitation would there be on how long work could continue after 5 p.m.
Commissioner Townsend, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. We wrote this condition to reflect a sort of a standard condition we developed after the Woodlands development project. And so we felt it was appropriate if they were to go over 5 p.m. that they would have to notify the neighbors. Again, I think it's a condition that makes it easier for us to enforce moving forward.
Oh, I like the notice aspect of it. I was wondering, is there a limitation though on if they're working after 5, how long they could work? I don't know if this is the kind of venture that produces a lot of noise, but in 5, they make reference to a residence, I guess not far from it. So I was wondering if there's any limitation on how long after 5 they could work. I don't know. That's really the question I had.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design, as it's written, there is no limitation. That would be up to the notification. We could amend it if you felt that was inappropriate and leave it at 7 to 5. We added the condition 7 to 5 because that is what the applicant said that their hours of operation would be. So we could be more restrictive if you wanted to change it. You're already requiring a supermajority to move forward if you so choose. So
She emailed me and asked me who was downstairs.
Well, I see Commissioner Kane has his hand up. He may have some input on this. It just seemed odd that they leave it open to work after 5 with no end time. That's the thing that seems strange. I don't, to me. Thank you.
Commissioner Kane?
Thank you, Mary. First of all, his comment about asphalt's only open during the summer is inaccurate. We're out there now in my area putting asphalt down. We have several asphalt crews that work for us. and when asphalt is getting laid down, they're working 10, 12 hours a day, 6 and 7 days a week to get their projects done. You know, there's no way they can say they'd be done by 5 o'clock, because it kind of depends on how much they have to do, how much stuff that they get, how many people are on the crew that day. So it would be impossible to follow those guidelines. And just the fact that he said it'd be only done during the summer leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Commissioner Kane, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Staff would be amenable to strike that second sentence and limit it to just 7 to 5 p.m. period.
You cannot limit when asphalt crews are out there. There's no way these guys can ask those guys, the people that work for them, to stop at 5 o'clock. You know, they have so much to do. They try to get as much done as they can, and they try to start before 7 when it's hot during the summer. So, you know, that'd be physically impossible for them to live up there or any other asphalt place.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend, District 1. Well, Commissioner Kane raises another question for me. Is this about just being able to have this company have a plant there, or is it about them doing work laying asphalt, as Commissioner Kane was talking about? And based on the information Commissioner Kane was talking about, maybe it might be advisable to change the hours or put some kind of restriction on it so it's not open. I don't know. That's really for the neighbors, but since there was a note in stipulation 5 about a residence across the street, that's what raised the question in my mind. Thank you.
Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. To specifically answer your question, Commissioner Townsend, the plant is simply the batch plant. It's where they produce the asphalt, load it on trucks, and then take it to a job site. They're not going to be laying down any asphalt on the property, aside from the asphalt they're going to build into the actual project to get it started from the get-go. Again, the part of this is to build a cul-de-sac. That cul-de-sac will probably be asphalt. So, but no, they're not going to be actively laying down asphalt on the site from 7 to 5. They're going to be actively producing this asphalt, loading it on trucks, and taking it to job sites around the region. So again, I think based on this conversation, my recommendation would be to amend condition number 5. It looks like number 4 on my screen, but that's just because this is a summarized list of all the conditions of approval, not the full list of conditions. So we could change number 5. I would recommend we change number 5 to limit it to just 7 to 5 p.m.
Thank you for that clarification.
Commissioner Burrows?
Thank you. Gunnar, do we have other asphalt companies in our community? And if we do, what are their hours of operation?
It's Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. I am not 100% sure if we have additional asphalt batch plants in our county. I know that we have approved previous SUPs for typically mini batch plants. Sometimes if the project is large enough, or if there's a multitude of projects happening at the same time, a construction site will set up a mini batch plant. And those mini batch plants are allowed on construction sites without SUPs, but sometimes they last longer. And we've approved SUPs in the past for them, for not just that construction site, but for other offsite uses as well. But I don't. This is a full scale batch plant.
Thank you. And Gunnar, if I remember correctly, this business had a temporary site there in the past. Was there any violations, any complaints from the neighbors or community in reference to how they operated, any citations or anything like that issued during the time they were here?
Yeah, again, Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. There are no historical NOVs on this property. And you're correct, this business did have a temporary batch plant on site a few years ago. They only operated it for 2 years. This batch plant also reflects a long-term investment of the company in the county, as they are going to move their offices and have employees there year-round.
Thank you, Gunnar.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
Walters, move for approval.
If I may, Mayor, can I confirm if Commissioner
Yes.
Walters, are you moving for approval with the limiting condition 5 to limit the hours from 7 to 5?
I was not.
Okay.
So we have a motion for the original resolution. Do I have a second? Commissioner Kane?
No, I'm good, sorry.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
McKiernan, second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Now, does the protest in play here or no?
Yes.
All right, so it takes 9 to make it pass?
Yes.
Yes, I just called. This is Commissioner Johnson. This person is outside of my house and she is confronting my wife and my son while I'm trying 2403 Nebraska court. I'm sorry, did you hear me? I'm sorry, 2403 Nebraska.
Commissioner Johnson, would you like us to just give you a few moments?
I'm sorry, aye.
All right, well, we haven't done roll call. We'll do that now. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane,
No.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
No.
McKiernan.
Aye.
The motion is 7-2. So the motion fails, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, Carol.
So the question I would have is, motion for master plan amendment, is that necessary at this point, Gunnar?
The staff report ties them together, so I think it's one can't pass without the other.
All right, that moves us on to the next item. Commissioner Townsend?
Commissioner Townsend, District 1, the question I had, I was prepared to make a motion recognizing the amendment made orally by Mr. Hand, if that can be done.
I think it had to be done during, I don't know, Misty?
Yes, Mayor, you had a motion and a vote that failed, and you could entertain another motion, that's different from the first on the item.
Okay.
So my motion, I would move approval subject to the stipulations with the amendment made by Mr. Hand to limit the hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m.
We have a motion.
Bynum, second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
I think we may have lost Commissioner Johnson.
okay, come back. Kane,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
and Commissioner Johnson. You back?
He has not joined us.
I talked to Commissioner Johnson. He told me he's gonna need to, he's signing off for a little bit.
Okay. Okay, so that has the motion 8-0.
Well, Carol, the mayor could vote in
Oh.
this instance since it would have a could make a determination.
Mayor Alby,
Aye.
so the motion does carry 9-0.
Thank you. We now entertain item for the master plan amendment, 2021-006. Entertain a motion.
Walters, move for approval.
Bynum, second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson, Kane,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows. I'm sorry, Commissioner Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Well, I don't think you have 9 votes because Commissioner Johnson did not vote, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. So sorry. Mayor Alby,
Aye.
motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. Next is item B1, special use permit application SP 2021-062. Gordon Arthur Scholes III with Club 403 requesting a special use permit for a drinking establishment, neighborhood bar with live entertainment at 614 Reynolds Avenue. The Planning Commission recommended approval for 2 years by a vote of 5-4. I'd ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. The application before you is a special use permit for live entertainment for an existing bar. It's the 403 Club in the central area master plan, right off 6th Street. The staff did have several conditions of approval related to this case, namely that the dumpster that the applicant has on their property be housed in their location behind the fence and enclosure as per city ordinance. We also asked that the applicant repair some of the overgrown sidewalks in the area. The applicant has since done that since the City Planning Commission recommended approval. Additional conditions of approval are related to some standard conditions we've created regarding illumination from any potential live entertainment at the location. We do ask that the entertainment end no later than 1 a.m. There were multiple neighbors and groups at the City Planning Commission that expressed support for the SUP. We received no letters in opposition. There are no NOVs on the property. Staff recommends approval with those conditions for 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. I'd ask the applicant to present his application. Please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Scholes.
My name is Gordon Scholes. My address is 525 North Thompson, Kansas City, Kansas, 66101.
Thank you, sir. Present your application.
I would just like to thank you all for taking the time to hear this. I have gone through the staff recommendations. My goal here is to increase potential revenue streams after surviving COVID somehow. I've realized that I need to open myself up to potentially doing anything that can make the bar money. So this is my bid to do such. I'm trying to use the proper channels to be approved here. On the staff recommendations, we've kind of hammered this out, and there are a few that I am opposed to and would like to say that number two, closing at 1 a.m. would put me at a severe disadvantage since Missouri is already 3 a.m. and the rest of Wyandotte County is 2 a.m. So closing at 1 a.m. would put me at a disadvantage. My stipulation on number 10, that dumpster that Gunner, Mr. Hand, excuse me, motion to there. I do not put it in that enclosure that exists because it is on the asphalt that I have refinished. I don't know how many of you know what a dumpster truck does to asphalt when it gets picked up once a week, but it would have not be good for my $10,000 investment of asphalt. I am willing to enclose it where it sits if that's okay with the commission. I made that concession, although I would like to state that it would be nice if it was unilaterally enforced that dumpsters need to be in enclosures. It scares me a little bit that it's going to make it a canvas for graffiti, which we have a problem with in the neighborhood at times, which will just cause extra and ongoing, maintenance. But I'm willing to do that. But again, it would be nice if there was some enforcement, unilateral enforcement in other areas where there's dumpsters on sidewalks and stuff that aren't, to me, as bad as the one that's sitting on the back of the gravel lot next to my bar. But again, I will be happy to enclose that dumpster. The other ones I had a problem with were the sidewalks around the area. I'm trying to make, an extra few $100s a week by maybe having a DJ or some karaoke and not spend several $1,000s to redo sidewalks. I did clean and I'm still in the process of cleaning that sidewalk along North 6th Traffic Way, which does look a lot better. And I can tell you that decay there is 25 years in the making. It's not just the 7 years that I've been there, but I am working to rectify that problem. And then number 14, the extra landscaping on top of the hill there behind my patio. I don't intend to have any live music on my patio. First off, like the other stipulations say, it will be indoors, the doors will be closed and the windows will be closed. I only have 4 small windows anyway, so I don't know why anything would illuminate from inside the closed building, but I would like that stipulation removed as well if possible. And everything else I think we've seen eye to eye on and can move forward if the commission sees fit. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Scholes. I would ask, open the public hearing now. Have we received any notification from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item?
No public comments are received.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak in favor of this special use permit? If you are present virtually, please raise your hand to be acknowledged.
I see no hands raised.
All right. Okay, we do have someone with their hand raised.
Oh,
Yes.
Pearl King.
Yes. Okay, Ms. King.
Oh, my name is Pearl King. My address is 10,004 Northwest 71st Street, Kansas City, Missouri, 64152. I appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening and for the work you do for our city. I've been retired since January of last year, but I've been working with bars and restaurants and specializing in liquor licensing for both the state and the city for about the last 15 years. I've done 6 or 7 at least businesses for special use permits, just like this one, in the last dozen years. When Artie decided that he wanted to go for an annual entertainment license, and he knew from hearing me talk about it before that the special use process was pretty involved. But I told him, look, yours should be a slam dunk of all the ones I've done. I'll stand by here and help you with it as much as I can. I have to tell you that when I saw the draft staff report on this, I about fell out. Typically, you always see on key issues, it's always going to be security, parking, noise. Those are the top 3. I've seen always at least one of those, typically 2, often 3, but never, ever have I seen 7. And all but 3 of them, I believe, totally unrelated to what the spirit of a special use permit of this type is actually about. I would ask that, and I'm not going to go into a lot of specifics because I know it's late and I know you're tired, but this is very important. I would ask that this be approved after the removal of stipulations number 2, 11, 12, and 14.
You have 1 minute, ma'am.
We really got to look at the ordinances under 2 about keeping places open, closing them 1 hour early. I don't understand the purpose of this and how 1 hour difference, how that mitigates any possible damage. Even past this, that's an ordinance that really needs to be looked at. And also the recycling dumpsters. That should be a whole nother issue that I thought was resolved years ago. I appreciate your time, your consideration. This needs to move forward, but without those other stipulations. Thank you.
Is there anyone else present who would like to speak in favor of this special use permit?
I see no other hands raised.
Thank you. Have we received any notification from the public who wish to express comments in opposition?
No opposition from the public were received.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in opposition?
No one is present, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll now close the public hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments?
Yes, thank you. I would just like to say again, thank you for taking the time to listen to all this. And I would appreciate a vote in my favor. I do lots of community events and would like to, keep doing as such. I bought a business in the neighborhood. I live up the street in the neighborhood, and I'm fully KCK guy all the way. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I'm now, any questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mayor. I have known Mr. Scholes for as long as he has owned this bar, and I am in favor of granting this special use permit. However, I do believe that some of the stipulations should be struck before we grant the special use permit. The document that came forward from the Planning Commission has 19 total stipulations on it. As I'll explain in a minute, I propose that Mr. Scholes only be required to comply with 14 of those 19 stipulations. I do believe that stipulations 2, 8, 11, 12, and 14 should be struck before approval. And if you'll indulge me, I'll comment briefly on each of those to give you my rationale for striking them. Stipulation 2 would set the closing time for Mr. Scholes' establishment at a time that is inconsistent with similar establishments across Wyandotte County. Mr. Scholes understands that at some point in the future, The UG may enforce a consistent closing time across all similar establishments. But at this time, I believe that we should strike that stipulation in the interest of consistency of enforcement. Stipulation number 8 is an incomplete sentence. It ends in a semicolon, so I simply ask that we strike that on procedural grounds. Stipulation 11 regards the ripple glass recycling container that Mr. Scholes has on the property. As is the case with stipulation 2, this stipulation would set up an uneven enforcement of regulations for ripple glass containers across all locations in Wyandotte County. Mr. Scholes understands, again, that at some point in the future, the UG may uniformly enforce regulations for similar recycling containers, and that he would need to be compliant at that time, but I propose to strike that stipulation now. Stipulation 12 asks that Mr. Scholes complete the sidewalk along Reynolds Avenue. Installation of a new sidewalk along Reynolds, I'm going to estimate, would cost several tens of thousands of dollars. If Mr. Scholes were contemplating any sort of external improvements to his property, or if the special use permit were to apply outdoors, then I'd be more inclined to support installing the sidewalk. But I can't see imposing tens of thousands of dollars of expense on a small business owner who's requesting an indoor permit as a way to try to recover from the pandemic. I believe Mr. Scholes has been a very responsible property owner, and he's made periodic improvements to his property, like repaving and restriping his parking lot, repainting and cleaning up the exterior of his building. In the future, he may decide that additional sidewalk would be of benefit to his business, but I do not believe that we should compel that now as a function of this special use permit. And then finally, stipulation 14 asks Mr. Scholes to landscape to the north of his patio to mitigate any negative effects of the lights under his patio canopy. Well, first of all, Mr. Scholes is requesting a special use permit for indoor activities, but additionally, he's had the same lights on his patio under the same canopy for all the years he's owned the establishment. And I'm not aware in those 7 or 8 years that those lights have caused any problems with traffic on 6th Street Trafficway or on any surrounding buildings. And there aren't many that are very close. His patio is kind of built in a bit of a hole. The ground really slopes up to the backside, to the north of his patio. And I do believe that that serves as a natural barrier. And I don't believe that additional landscaping would have any additive screening value. So with all of that said, thank you for indulging me in explaining my rationale. I would move to approve the special use permit and strike stipulations 2, 8, 11, 12, and 14.
Commissioner Mike Kane, second.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of really shouldn't have my hand up because everything I was going to ask or say was said by Commissioner McKiernan. So I'll drop off.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Urban Design. Can I make a clarification on condition number 8?
Yes.
Condition number 8 is a typo by staff. I apologize for that. It should read, any illumination that results from an entertainment event shall not be seen or otherwise impact adjacent residential uses. I think that's in line with all the comments tonight. I would ask that that be maintained and simply be corrected. Again, I apologize for our typo.
Mr. Mayor, this is Commissioner McKiernan. I would agree with that clarification and would agree to keep stipulation number 8 in place.
Commissioner Mike Kane, second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson, Kane,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 8-0.
Thank you. Now we move to item D1, an update on the Armadale Area Master Plan. I'd ask staff to present this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Gunnar Hendrick, our Planning and Urban Design. I'd like to defer to my lead advanced planner, Ms. Kim Portillo, to introduce the consultant who will give a brief presentation on the Armadale Area Master Plan. I believe she's being promoted to panelist as we speak.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you guys for giving us a second of your time today. As you probably know, the Unified Government Planning Team, along with our consultant team, PORT, the Armadale Renewal Association, and the citizens of Armadale have been working several months on the Armadale Area Master Plan. We have a presentation for you guys tonight that is informational only, but we do have the draft of the plan created. So we ask that you review our presentation tonight. We're not asking for any action tonight, but we would like you to take a look at the full draft of the plan, which can be found on armadalestrong.com, and give us any comments or feedbacks through that way by October 4th. And then we'll hope to see you guys next month as well. So with that, I'll pass it over to Andrew Modrell, who is our consultant from PORT. It looks like he might need to be promoted too, maybe.
Okay, hello, can everyone see and hear me?
Yes,
Great.
sir.
All right, thank you. I'm sharing my screen, maybe a thumbs up if everyone can see when it pops up. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing a few minutes of your evening. I am pleased to share our progress on about 9 months of active work on the Armadale Area Master Plan. This process has been really engaged, and several commissioners here have been heavily involved in the steering committee and beyond as we've worked through this process. We just issued the draft master plan, I guess about a week and a half ago for review and comment. This is also in conjunction with a community open house at the Armadale Community Center and a launch of the draft on our website that Kim mentioned, armadalestrong.com. So as I mentioned, we've been meeting once a month with a steering committee comprised of DG staff across numerous departments, several commissioners, including Bynum, Burrough, McKiernan, and community groups such as Crosslines and the Armadale Renewal Association. And then we've also been working with an outreach team to host a series of events and engage the Armadale neighborhood in a number of conversations, surveys, and outreach efforts. So I just want to quickly, this is a really in-depth process and report that we just issued. I just want to hit the high points pretty quickly here, and then also highlight a few of the recommendations and priorities that have emerged pretty recently from all of the work that we've been synthesizing as part of what's becoming the final master plan, for any kind of reaction, questions, or comments also. So just to give you a sense of the last, I guess this isn't very long, last few weeks, we had our informational presentation to the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee, which some of you saw. We had an informational presentation to the Planning Commission. We had the Community Center Open House, and we presented also this whole, on just Friday, to the whole steering committee, the kind of culmination of what, again, has been a long and engaged process. Here we are with the presentation of the Board of Commissioners, and then we have a couple more Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners meetings coming up. And as Kim said, it's still open comment period, and we're collecting feedback on all of the work to date. That work is quite extensive. We're really proud of the effort that we've carried out, and it's for a pretty amazing and deserving place. And so we have kind of thrown a lot of hours and time and effort toward it. And I think that will come through in the report. So the main report, we have an Armadale overview and vision. We have an overview of the community outreach process, and then these 5 focus areas that have emerged through this process that we're targeting specific strategies and actions. And so I'm just going to go through those at a very high level. Attached to the document on the Armadale Strong website is also about 150 pages of analysis, surveys, community engagement, a lot more in depth about essentially the history of Armadale, which in many ways, mirrors the history of Kansas City. It's a really very interesting place, and that's all cataloged and documented there. And I invite you to look through that. So as I said, we started at the very beginning looking at the origin of Armadale, the history of Armadale and its evolution over the last, approximately 150 years, if you will. This includes significant stories about the history of industry and labor in Kansas City and in the Midwest. Also, the Hispanic heritage and the origin of the strong Hispanic legacy and identity that continues to thrive in Armadale today. And also the unique challenges of essentially the only neighborhood in Kansas City that is entirely in a floodplain. So that is an incredibly unique characteristic of Armadale. And so we're all well aware of the history of flooding and what that's meant to this neighborhood. Not only flooding, but this essentially a cycle of racial segregation, neglect, redlining, attempts at what you see on the right of urban renewal projects that would essentially wipe out large areas of the neighborhood, replace with high-rise housing. Those ultimately failed, but there still were, east of 7th Street, large sections of the neighborhood that were replaced with industrial uses in the 1960s. Essentially, a place that declined by about 15,000 people from its original population only 100 years ago, due to mostly this encroachment of the industrial properties all around the neighborhood core of Armadale. So what you see in yellow is the industry that, again, you see very little east of 7th that is kind of a neighborhood or commercial scale, but large industrial properties. And this is a kind of point of conflict in the neighborhood where you often see the relationship between these small kind of residential homes adjacent to active industry. Much of the encroachment, though, has been by not very high value industrial uses. Here you see Armadale has a pretty extensive collection of piles of things, whether those are train axles, wooden pallets, huge truck tires, fire extinguishers you can see on Kansas Avenue. There's a lot of low value industrial storage uses that, again, have kind of consumed the periphery of the neighborhood and essentially continue to degrade its value and also just the quality of life in the neighborhood. This is an example throughout Armadale of poor maintenance or existence of sidewalks that have been historically not maintained or grown over. There's a housing stock that I think there's been maybe one new house built per year over the last 25 years on average in the whole neighborhood. It's about 50% renter occupied. And what you see here are the vacant residential parcels in the neighborhood. What you see in the outside, the kind of dashed red line, if you can see that fine line, that was the residential area of Armadale before the 1951 flood. And what you see now in highlighted in green is the current residential boundary. And you can really see that kind of jagged edge where parcels that have been kind of claimed from the neighborhood for industrial use. The blue dots are actual vacant lots in the neighborhood where homes have been torn down or washed away over the years. There's also a pretty limited set of cultural or civic resources in the neighborhood. The civic resources are near zero, no libraries. I mean, there's a couple great schools, but there aren't libraries, police stations, or fire stations, or kind of any kind of civic investment that still is active in the neighborhood. I guess there is also a great park, Shawnee Park, or at least a historically great park, Shawnee Park, and the Armadale Community Center, and a small park, Bill Clem Park. But in general, this is a kind of under resourced from a kind of civic infrastructure in the neighborhood. Also very poor access to health resources and fresh food. There are no grocery stores in Armadale, and there are no pharmacies or clinics, doctors' offices, or anything in Armadale. They are surrounded by a strong constellation on all sides, but for the neighborhood core, are zero resources in Armadale proper. One thing we are mindful of and is a good alignment for the work that we're doing is the upcoming grants to repair sewer and stormwater or introduce sewer and stormwater to certain areas of the neighborhood, as well as reinvestments in bridge repair, new bridge, and the levee raise project that is going to have a number of betterment projects carried out in conjunction with the levee raise that will also serve to enhance the Armadale community and access to the river for Armadale residents and beyond. So all of that research and cataloging of Armadale's current condition, having not seen a master plan since 1979, we really called out and have verified with the community and the steering committee this kind of awareness of this downward cycle of what comes from the isolation and the vulnerability, the legacy of segregation, neglect, deterioration, disinvestment. And the attempt of this master plan is to try to propose actionable strategies that ideally pause and ultimately reverse this downward cycle toward an Armadale that has made it this far and now is kind of commanding the attention and resources and investment that it deserves for having essentially weathered the storm, if you will, to a place that deserves investments that make it attractive, included, empowered, safe, accessible, and stimulated. So that's really the core of this Armadale strong idea. And this, again, this idea and how we've been listening and engaging the community throughout this process has been kind of multifaceted effort that includes hiring an outreach team of neighborhood residents. So essentially paying them for their time to participate in the planning process, to disseminate online and printed surveys to their neighbors and friends, to hang posters and distribute postcards at local businesses, to direct people to the website to fill out surveys and leave comments, to drive attendance and participate in community workshops. And then, of course, community leaders have also been part of the steering committee and UG staff and so on. So all of this has kind of honed in on what our master plan priorities are. So here's a few examples of a focus group that we hosted at John Fisk Elementary School, a block party at John Fisk Elementary School this summer, where we're engaging conversations with residents and taking notes of stories and priorities throughout that process. This is an image of last week's master plan review and planning empowerment open house at the Armadale Community Center, where there were big boards that essentially had all of these 5 focus areas and strategies for review, comment, and conversation to, again, there's a lot of strategies here, and that we're at this moment trying to pull out the ones that we can really prioritize to push starting soon on pushing the master plan, the outcome of the master plan into real effective change. So here are the 5 focus areas. Focus on the neighborhood core, the corridors that link to and through Armadale, the industrial ring that surrounds the neighborhood core and around to the river and the rail, the Kansas River itself, and the West Bottoms, which is part of Armadale, near the what would be known as the Central Industrial District. So here you see the plan of these 5 color-coded areas: Green River. You see the neighborhood core in orange, the darker red are the corridors linking to and through the neighborhood, and you see the West Bottoms in blue. So essentially, throughout this process, we've been targeting these strategies and action items, again, for these areas. So and you could go through the report, I think there's something like 14 or 15 strategies alone. And I think that list even expanded a little bit with the most recent steering committee meeting and some of the feedback we've been gathering. But a strategy, for instance, could be support infill housing, to think about the vacant lots and creating new homes in Armadale. And in the report, we try to outline these goals, the context, the target, the steps to get there, the partners that can be involved in the process. And we obviously don't have the time in this format to go into that in detail, but we really try to provide illustrative examples of what an impact that Habitat for Humanity or Housing First projects, for instance, could have on the neighborhood core to fill in some of these vacant spaces. So just to summarize in blue here, coming out of the community workshop and the most recent steering committee meeting, projects are from this list of 15, the ones that really kind of garner the most conversation or comments toward prioritizing were Housing First projects, essentially demonstrating investment in Armadale as a way to promote more investment in Armadale, to really start on the ground by making a direct impact, investing in Armadale-based community organizations like the ARA to increase their resources for expanding access to legal aid or other tenant services potentially, as well as advocating for access to fresh food, whether that's trying to draw a grocery store or mobile, dot mobile grocer or other food truck programs, as well as establishing a community mural program. And there's a resident, Gene Chavez, or I guess former resident, who is really advocating for participation in this mural program. So I'm trying to move quickly here, but this is a lot of this is in the report and will be in the next issue of the report with these priorities. But these are the ones that really came to the surface for residential. There is a lot of overlap with the corridor category for the fact that it does, essentially cut through the residential core, but also raises other connectivity opportunities with, Kansas City beyond Kansas Avenue heading east toward the West Bottoms, the 12th Street bridge heading south to Argentine. So we've done a number of studies that look at the existing cross section of the roads and the conditions of the roadways and essentially their large scale that works great for large, trucks, but not so great for neighborhood safety. And have been proposing in conjunction with the WIFIA grants and stormwater and sewer infrastructure, how we can introduce best practices for containing and containing water, producing green space, shade space. So here you see a couple, or example of Osage Avenue, for instance, a street that runs through the very center of Armadale and has the potential to be a really pedestrian oriented and small business oriented kind of retail street. So we've illustrated those both, as you saw in the section, but also in 3 dimensions to kind of see what we mean by introducing bike lanes and trees and how that can really have a strong impact on the community. There's also several drawings here where you'll see this is connecting to the Rock Island Bridge and the levee betterment project. So trying to make those connections between the plan and those projects that are underway. So for the corridors, what we heard, especially recently, were yes, this idea of installing green stormwater infrastructure, in some cases, stormwater infrastructure at all, connecting as many opportunities as we can to the river and making those connections explicit and for the community to embrace the river as this resource in their backyard and invite Kansas City to come to Armadale to access the river and really celebrate the legacy of the river and westward expansion and what the river has meant historically to Kansas City. The industrial ring you see here, the area of most concern is this really dark ring right around the neighborhood core. Again, trying to strengthen the neighborhood and limit that kind of encroachment or these kind of low value uses that are right in the backyard of many Armadale residents, as well as optimize the area in yellow for the sense that, large trucks might not need to drive down through Osage, through the very geographic center of Armadale, for instance, to get onto I-35, I-70. The industrial businesses that are in Armadale are very happy because of their connectivity to Kansas City and the region. And that is a real strength that Armadale provides to these businesses. However, 18-wheelers through residential neighborhoods could easily be avoided given the existing infrastructure. So we're trying to look at strategies for optimizing truck routes, limiting the use of some of these low value, again, industrial uses adjacent to the neighborhoods, and trying to orient future development away from the box in the middle of an asphalt parking lot to something that's more internalized and landscaped and is stormwater efficient, energy efficient. So those recommendations are in there. But in general, we're trying to expand space available to small and medium-sized businesses, closing Osage Avenue potentially to heavy truck traffic, and reorient those away from the neighborhood core, expand access to UG business recruitment and development. So letting everyone know also that Armadale is open for business. Armadale is going to be here for another 100 years, and that is a place that wants a grocery store and it wants other businesses to come to Armadale. So really using the UG's resources to direct new businesses to Armadale and make those resources available to Armadale residents. The river, we know, again, with the levee betterments and the enhancements that are coming with that, we were looking explicitly at all of the hubs where bridges or streets meet the river and trying to illustrate specifically where there's areas for parking, trailheads, or other amenities that start to activate the river and what we're calling these river hubs kind of all along its length. So again, not to get into a ton of detail here, but obviously a big one will be the Rock Island Bridge. So trying to, again, show how Kansas Avenue links to that, where parking would be, how you might, exit a boat and get to the bridge. But others that are more community oriented, like 12th Street, or reusing the Central Avenue Bridge for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, linking across to the West Bottoms, but also accessing the river. So I tried to only highlight a couple here, but essentially with the river, all of these strategies kind of overlap with one another and go along to support river trail signage, access, historic designation, celebrating the heritage of the river, implementing restoration projects to improve the ecological health of the riverbanks, promoting a master plan for the Kansas River to prioritize and implement a lot of these hubs and spaces, work with community groups to expand programming and recreational opportunities, restore the health of the river, access, and so on. So generally, a lot of kind of universal support for kind of facing the river and accessing the river, and really trying to leverage the river into an amazing asset for Kansas City and Armadale. Finally, the West Bottoms, which again is this blue little sliver along the state line and straddling both sides of the river in blue here. We didn't propose a single plan. This whole district kind of demands its own master plan in the future. We essentially tried to visualize and test out the pros and cons of a few different scenarios, whether that's a mixed use residential district that really ties closely to the development of the Stockyards district and the West Bottoms, or whether it's a riverfront destination that is more of a, could be oriented really toward the river with a riverfront park and larger kind of civic or larger civic buildings or convention buildings, or an incubator hub where it is more of a next generation logistics and industrial infrastructure, somewhat similar to the uses in the floodplain, but maybe an example of the future of those models. So there was support for rethinking the Central Avenue Bridge as it's decommissioned, celebrating the westward expansion and national heritage, with this area and the significance of this, the confluence of the Kansas and the Missouri, and then again continue to explore a district plan for the West Bottoms in general that really fleshes out the feasibility of some of these different potential tracks. So that is a big summary of everything. I tried to move quickly. This is again a very in-depth project where we can spend a lot of time, and we have, talking about each of these topics, but thank you for your attention and time this evening.
And if I may, before we open this up, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Design. There's a couple of things that I wanted to add just as you are reviewing the draft and providing your comments. There's a couple of really big moves here that are transformative for this neighborhood that we wanted to make front and center. First and foremost, Mr. Madrell misspoke earlier. We are well aware that there's a fire station in Armadale on Kansas Avenue, east of 7th Street. Secondly, this process was done entirely bilingual. You saw it in some of our outreach photos there. It was both Spanish and English. We had multiple Spanish-only conversations as a part of this planning process. While we will not do it until after the adoption of the master plan, like the Central Area Master Plan, we will fully translate the document in Spanish as well, moving forward. I think some of you might have asked the question, why is the historic West Bottoms included in the Armadale Area Master Plan? There's two reasons. There's three reasons primarily. It was never incorporated into the Central Area or the Downtown Master Plan. Like Armadale, the historic West Bottoms is both very industrial in nature and very much attached to the Kansas River. So it was natural for us to expand the Armadale planning area outside of the traditional neighborhood of Armadale. But to get to the two main things I'd like you to think about as you're reading and reviewing the document and moving forward, ideally with the approval process in October, is that for about a century, there has been an air of ambiguity for Armadale, from redlining to urban renewal, even up to the 1979 plan, where it continued to pose the question, should the residential neighborhood of Armadale be wiped off the map and replaced by industrial development? That was never answered in the 1979 plan. This plan very affirmatively says that the residential neighborhood is here to stay and obviously provides additional strategies to move it forward. We believe that certainty is what will drive additional private investment in the Armadale neighborhood. Anecdotally, we've even started to see that with some of the land bank projects that have come online even in the last month. I would also just want to note the other big thing here is obviously rethinking the Kansas River. We have historically turned our back on this river. It has always been industrial in nature. With everything else that was already going on, this master planning codifying it, this is our opportunity, starting even before Mr. Madrell and his team started. We were working with the Kansas City Design Center to start to rethink the Kansas River as an asset and opportunity and a driver of growth moving forward. So the connection to the Kansas River, again, things we're already working on, but how to better connect our community, how to better connect the development that's already happening because of those connections, specifically around the Rock Island Bridge into the neighborhood of Armadale, to encourage that investment to be equitable, is another big thing that we've been moving forward. So I just wanted to add those two main thoughts as you kind of review the plan, and we're happy to take any questions, comments, thoughts you might have thus far.
And quickly, in the neighborhood core is what I meant to say, Gunnar. Thank you regarding the fire station. I know there's one on Kansas Avenue, but.
So I think before I ask for commission comments, or unless you have some questions, I would like to move to the public hearing if there's anyone. There is time for commission discussion after. Have we received any notification from the public who wish to express their comments in favor of this item?
No public comments were received.
Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor?
We do have one.
Thank you. Are they promoted to panelists?
Oscar?
Sorry, this might not be the time, and I know this is according to something else, but I'm lost. My special use permit, I think we're far along, and I lost track, and I'm trying to see, and I was having some technical difficulties, and I've been trying to kind of raise my hand at different points, and I'm so sorry if this is not the time.
No, it is not. No, it is not. Reach out to Mr. Hand.
Mr.
I'm
Flores, your project was moved on the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry for interrupting this.
No problem. No problem.
Thank you very much, guys.
Anyone present would like to speak in opposition?
I see no hands raised.
Do we have any notification from the public in opposition?
No notifications received.
Thank you. I now close the public hearing. Recognize Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a first glimpse of our new Armadale master plan, and it's my understanding we aren't going to vote on this tonight, but I wanted to say to the team that number one, it's a fascinating plan, and I am amazed at how you managed to take all of the input that I participated in, plus the communications from the community at large, and create this document. It's really impressive. And I just really appreciate participating, even if I mostly am a listener to these master planning processes, but most importantly, the way that you engage with the community. And it's going to be a very valuable plan. And I really think that it has workable components, which I think is the most important part. So Gunnar and Mr. Madrell and everyone, really, lots of work and effort. Thank you so much. That's all I wanted to say.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mayor. I will do my best to be brief as well. Mr. Madrell and everybody from Port, Gunnar, Kim, everybody from Urban Planning, I thank you very much for the hard work that you've put in on this. I will say this is one of the most robust, illustrative, and guiding master plans that I've seen. Now, granted, our challenge is still to execute these things, but you have given us so many actionable strategies in each of the 5 component areas that I do believe we have a very clear roadmap on first steps, second steps, third steps. And so I want to tell you just how much I appreciate the in-depth nature of this report and the fact that you have given us paths forward. I do think, as you pointed out, that residential and commercial can coexist in the Armadale area. If there's one thing that I know for all these years, It's that the residents, those folks who live in Armadale, are fiercely proud of their neighborhoods. And I do believe that we can work with those residents for the continued improvement of those neighborhoods. I will say 50% rental is actually, I don't think that's too out of line with other urban areas, although we would love to have more home ownership. To have that many rentals, as long as they are good rentals, I don't think is necessarily a negative. I will echo what Gunnar said before, that already we just got a preview of our next land bank agenda, and there are several applications for options on properties on which new single-family homes will be built, and that is really exciting to see. Since we haven't even closed this process yet, there is already interest in building. With that, I will just say once again, thanks to all for your work. Our job now is to pull this off.
Commissioner Burrough.
Thank you, Mayor. The two former speakers really laid it out. I just want to say how unique I think and forward thinking this plan was to tie in the Central Avenue Bridge to bring two communities together collectively as one, giving them both ownership in a plan. I think that's a very unique process. And unless, and the fact that we haven't given Armadale the consideration and the respect over 50 years, I think it's very telling in what we were able to listen to and find out. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit and opportunities for Armadale, and I would hope that as we move forward on the master plan, that we identify those early and show the citizens that we're serious about the master plan.
This is Gunnar, Director of Planning and Design. Again, thank you all for your time. If you have any comments, please let us know. We can take them online. You can call us. You can send us letters. We can come visit you. We're happy to do what we need to take your comments and move this forward. Again, I think one of the things that we were proud of specifically was it wasn't just a planning and urban design effort. We brought all of the UG departments on board on this process. We all have buy-in as a UG family in Armadale. Again, I've hit this a couple of times with you all. This is not my plan. This is the UG's plan.
Thank you. That concludes planning and zoning portion. Now I'll move to the regular portion of our agenda. The first item under the mayor's agenda, the appointment of Commissioner Jane Philbrook as the voting delegate and Bridgette Cobbins as alternate for the Kansas Association of Counties 46th Annual Conference and Exhibition. Any comments or questions?
District 2, move to approve.
Second. Burrough.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Ramirez.
Aye.
And Commissioner Johnson, have you joined us?
Yes, I am. Aye, thank you.
Commissioner Kane.
Aye.
Walters. Commissioner Walters.
Aye.
Oh, thank you. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrough.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Next, we move to the regular consent agenda. Does any member of the commission or county administrator wish to set aside any item on the regular consent agenda? Not set aside. All items on the regular consent agenda will be voted on by one vote.
Move to approve all items as submitted. Ramirez.
McKiernan, second.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Ramirez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrough.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
All right, that moves to standing committee. Item number 1, a resolution approving unified government mitigation plan for staff related to COVID-19 and the allocation of American Rescue Plan Act funds. This item was presented to the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee on September 27th. The committee voted 4-1 to fast track to tonight's commission for further discussion. And asked Commissioner Bynum, who chaired the meeting, has anything to add, and then I'll open it up for presentation and a commission discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I would add is that I think we did have consensus that we needed to have a full commission discussion of what was presented, and I believe we are going to see that presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'd ask Renee Ramirez to present to us.
Yes, good evening. Let me get my screen up here. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, Renee.
Not yet? Okay. Give me 1 second, please. Are you able to see my screen now?
We are not.
Okay. My apologies. It's up here on my screen and I'm sharing my screen.
Does someone else have a presentation they can pull up for her? There we go. Thank you, Shakiva.
Thank you. Thank you, Shakiva. All righty. Good evening, Commissioners. I am Renee Ramirez, Director of Human Resources. With me this evening, I have two members from the HR team, Shakiva Christian, HR Manager, and Dave Wimberly, Risk Manager. As you know, can you switch screens? As you know, we are well into our second year of dealing with COVID-19 and the threats its variants cause our health and well-being. As stewards of the community's resources, we have an obligation to put forth measures that protect our employees and avoid any chance of outbreaks that could cause staff shortages, increase labor costs, and increase health care costs. Our goal is to always strive to provide a safe and healthy workplace for our number one asset, which are the employees of the unified government. This evening, we come before you with a mitigation plan for staff for consideration. Early on, when COVID-19 hit, we implemented many measures to reduce the spread amongst our workforce. We continued to social distance, limit capacity in elevators, modified workspaces with protection barriers, and many others as I've listed on this slide. In addition, previously, we provided special COVID leave for employees as outlined in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and continue to provide this leave after the original expiration date in December of 2020. We also made it available even after that through May 31st of 2021. And again, we introduced it another time, which it had a limited COVID leave that we made effective September 7th of 2021 for partially and fully vaccinated employees that will sunset on December 31st of 2021. Listed on this next slide, these are the employee types who make up the workforce that will be covered under this mitigation plan. Earlier this summer, next slide. Earlier this summer, the mask mandate was lifted for a short period of time because of the rise of COVID cases in our community. We had to reintroduce it to our workforce for employee safety on August the 6th of 2021, regardless of their vaccination status. We continue to communicate with our employees on a weekly basis where they can go and get COVID vaccinations for free. Vaccinations continue to be available at the Wyandotte County Health Department, at any healthcare provider, or any pharmacy, and we've also made them available at our Employee Wellness Center. The Road to Wellness Employee Health Center has the Pfizer vaccine available for those employees who choose to use that location. Dependents of unified government employees who are on our medical insurance can also get vaccinated at the Road to Wellness Employee Health Center. Employees who have been vaccinated can upload their proof of vaccination to a secured site which is maintained by Human Resources. Proof of vaccination is treated as medical information and kept separately from any employee's personnel file. I am pleased to announce this evening that as of September 27, 2021, we have 1,269 employees out of approximately 2,300 employees who are vaccinated. As we continue to work through ways to provide a safe workplace for our employees, we drafted a mitigation plan for consideration. We start off with an incentive for employees who are fully vaccinated and offering them a one-time $400 monetary incentive who have received all recommended doses of the COVID vaccination. This incentive does come with a cost of approximately $1 million if all 2,300 employees are fully vaccinated, meaning 2 doses of the Pfizer or Moderna and 1 dose of the Johnson & Johnson. The monetary incentive is an ARPA eligible expense. This next slide introduces a one-time monetary incentive of $100 for the booster vaccination. We would, of course, follow the recommended guidance by our public health officials for the booster. Human Resources is already receiving certifications from employees who have received their 3rd dose. The incentive for the booster would have a sunset date of December 31st of 2022. This next slide presents an options to consider for mandatory weekly testing for non-fully vaccinated employees. We could also modify this option to test all unified government employees regardless of their vaccination status. If testing is implemented, employees could self-administer a saliva-based PCR test or possibly a rapid test depending on the availability. The estimated cost per employee is approximately $65 per test for the PCR version. This expense is eligible for FEMA reimbursement at 100% through December 31st of 2021. Weekly testing would include procedures that would occur if an employee refuses to test. An employee who takes this position would be sent home and not permitted to substitute paid leave for any period of unpaid suspended work. The refusal would be considered a disciplinary action pursuant to applicant memorandum of understandings for collective bargaining unit employees and disciplinary provisions within the Human Resources Guide for non-union employees. Lastly, we have listed testing options for consideration. The first is test non-fully vaccinated employees. We could test all employees regardless of their vaccination status, or we can maintain the status quo and have no testing. I will now turn the presentation over to Ryan Dink, outside counsel.
Thank you, Renee. Ryan Dink, outside counsel representing the unified government. I did want to talk about what we've done to engage with our 13 different labor unions relating to this subject. What I wanted to first start with is maybe provide a little context as to when this whole policy or the concept for this policy was originally rolled out. As Renee noted earlier in the presentation, we came back with the mask mandate at the beginning of August the 6th. That was, as you all know, precipitated by a substantial increase in cases, predominantly because of the onset of the Delta variant. And so it was about at that time that we began having discussions internally about the need for the ability to engage in a policy to, again, try to encourage vaccination. And the other piece of that COVID prevention stool was testing. So we began talking about what kind of mitigation plan we wanted to put together. The first part of August, the original program that we put together did not have a monetary incentive attached to the vaccination. It was proposed, we were originally proposing to start testing in September, and then we had the special COVID-80 leave. I will say that, I don't think any of you are foreign to the concept, if you've been around for the last year and a half, that in reacting to COVID and what's going on with COVID in the community and in the workplace, you've got to be fairly nimble. So, over the course of the pandemic, we've had many different types of COVID employee benefits, such as the COVID special 80 leave. The health department has employed protocols such as vaccination, quarantine, mandatory testing at various times. And all of that's been done. All that was done without negotiation because, we're under a state of emergency and, we were reacting very quickly. We did, in this circumstance, we did ultimately engage with the unions. The first communication with some of the unions was during the week of August the 16th. We engaged with some of the unions and received some feedback on our proposed policy. And based upon that feedback from some of the unions, we shifted in what we were proposing to put out in the policy. That's when we moved to the monetary incentive. And that was based upon feedback from unions. And we pushed back the implementation of the testing to December the 1st to give employees every opportunity to get vaccinated before we implemented a testing program, again, based upon feedback from the unions. We continued to have discussions with every one of our unions, and we have reached out and communicated with every one of the unions and received feedback from just about every one of them. When we shifted to the new policy, we ultimately communicated, internally, we finalized that policy on September the 17th and what that would look like that you have in your packets. That was pushed out to the unions the very same day. Every single one of them got it. And we requested feedback and comment. Let's see, 4 days later on the 21st, I put together just a very kind of rudimentary letter of understanding. Basically, all the letter of understanding said was, yes, we agree to be bound by the terms of the testing policy. It also preserved their right to grieve any discipline that was late that may be given under the policy. Every union's going to want that under their just cause standards, so we included that. And then we had a provision in there that allowed us to shift if the saliva-based testing became unavailable or impractical, to shift to other FDA type approved testing. So that was really not much substantive in that LOU, but that was pushed out to them on the 21st. And again, with the invitation to provide feedback. We have received feedback from almost all of our unions. We've had meetings with all of them, and I can report to you what that feedback has been. LIUNA 1290 basically said, and this was a discussion that we had with them, or not just with them, but with all the unions. Are these subjects even things that we are required under state law to negotiate with unions over. I think out of an abundance of caution, because we're talking about paying them more money, we did engage in where we have engaged in these discussions. LIUNA looked at it and said, you know what, we don't think it's something that we need to negotiate or have an LOU in place, but we support it, and you know, please move forward with the program. We conferred with, we've had a couple of meetings with IAFF over the topic. The most recent meeting was yesterday, and their feedback was they want to see testing. They generally support the program, but they want to see testing because they're living in a firehouse with other firefighters, and you could have asymptomatic vaccinated people carrying the virus. They want to see testing of everybody, whether you're vaccinated or not. We told them that we would bring that request back to the commission. Fraternal Order of Police Lodge number 4, they have in essence said that if the commission approves the program, they would put it to a vote of their membership to see what the membership wanted to do. Other unions, we've got several signed LOUs from several of our trade unions, our other unions, including IBEW, AFSCME, UFCW, who represents our police dispatchers. Very good discussions. They haven't provided any comments back. I think they're waiting to see what comes out of this meeting, but I would anticipate that ultimately they would be supportive of it. So that's what our interaction has been with the unions. You know, we've, like I said, we've tried to engage, take their feedback. We've modified the program based upon their feedback, which is the way negotiations is supposed to work. And so that's where we sit right now.
Commissioners, this is Misty Brown, Chief Counsel for the Unified Government. So where we're coming to the end of the presentation, and items that we have for consideration tonight, which we're hoping to get some feedback from the commission, is that we have a resolution that has been prepared and is in the packet, which essentially adopts a COVID mitigation plan and approves an ARPA allocation of up to $1 million to fund the incentive. Items tonight that I can anticipate being discussed is whether or not the commission even wishes to have an incentive, and if there's any proposed amendments to the plan, particularly regarding testing and the requirements for an LOU. An item as we are going through the LOU that keeps coming up is there's a pending question out there. If we are deciding to do testing and a union decides not to sign the LOU, is it the commissioner's wish that members of that bargaining unit would still receive the incentive, or would they not receive the incentive if an LOU was not signed and testing was mandated? So Shakiva, if you could go to the next slide. So we've outlined here some potential options, and there's probably some options that aren't on this table, but if you look at it, we're looking at one option is to adopt an incentive plan and approve an ARPA allocation and have no testing. You could have incentive plus testing for all unvaccinated employees. We could have an incentive plan plus testing for all employees. Or another option is simply to maintain the status quo, have no incentive, no allocations of ARPA fundings, and no testing. So with that, I will turn this back to our county administrator if he has anything else to add.
Thank you, Misty, Renee, and Ryan. I appreciate you going over this material tonight. As we started to move through this, I think it's been outlined that for me, the incentive was what can we do to protect our employees? What can we do to put them in a better position to combat COVID, to keep them healthy themselves? It also puts them in a position to better serve the public, because as we all know, through the course of last year, our employees continued to serve throughout the year. We didn't have the option of not being out there and responding to calls or responding to activities that we need to do within our city and meet the needs of our citizens. And also, I think it also protects us from spreading it additionally against the public. So with that, and getting the feedback from our employee groups really led me to push forward to say, okay, let's go after this from something that is a true incentive to our employees. It makes a difference to motivate more of them to get the COVID vaccine. And that's why we brought this program forward to the governing body. I really hope, I know it's one in talking to hundreds of employees throughout the course of this last week. It is something that employees are looking forward to. They would like to see more of their other employees vaccinated, and hope the commission will consider advancing this with funding this evening. Mayor, that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, I think, appreciate the comments you made at the end, which is really basic, the rationale for doing this, the reasons why we're even considering a plan for incentivizing vaccinations, mandatory testing, those kinds of things. I think that's kind of holds this together, helps us to understand perhaps the urgency of it, because again, there's going to be opposition. But I thought it was interesting. The Chief of the Armed Services, as they're contemplating mandatory vaccinations for all armed service personnel, the rationale is that they are called to serve, they work to serve, to protect and defend, and they do that every day, but they have to be available to do that. And historically, in battles, it's actually better to wound your opponent than it is to kill them, because the opposing army has to exhaust their resources caring for the wounded, removing them, caring for them. And actually, weapons are designed more to maim than to kill. Many of them are. So, that's a fairly dire comparison, but I do think that our responsibility as UG employees is to be available and to take every measure we can to be available, and testing and vaccination to protect one another from the disease is really important. I recognize Commissioner Kane.
Well, the way we, try not to get excited here. Lyona does not support this. I work for Lyona. Allen House called me today and they listened. They didn't sign anything. They didn't do anything. They understand what you're trying to do, but they didn't agree with it. So that is an inaccurate statement to the point of a lie. And we stand there, you say you got 4 unions that agreed to it, and how many unions do we have total? And then I got a response from one of the unions, not sure how I would ever sign an LOU with so many lines about the employer unilaterally changing things. This decision was put out. The unions were notified by mail. Nobody ever sat down with them until after the fact to discuss what's going on, because this is a negotiated item that they should be talking about. Now, let me back up a second. I fully believe everyone should be vaccinated, but not dictated to on how they should do it, whether they're union employees or not. We're standing there, and if this was General Motors where I worked, a lot of these employees would go on strike because they don't like being dictated to. And my frustration is we're saying Lyona agreed to it, and they don't. So how many other unions have Mr. Dink talked about that he says they agreed to and they didn't? Staff, not Mr. Bach, staff needs to go back to the local unions and say, what is it going to take to make this work? And I am positive some of them will work to make this work. I also know there'll be bumps in the road as we go, but I don't want to hear somebody say Lyona agreed to it when they didn't, which really scares the hell out of me, because now you're saying, how many other unions did he say would agree with it? Unions are there for a reason. They're to be negotiated with, not dictated to. And when you send something out that says Management has the right to do something. The union also has the right to challenge it. And I know Ryan says, yep, they can write those grievances. I've been a union rep since 1983. And I've never heard what I heard tonight about Lyona said they agreed to that, when no way in hell did they agree with that. But here we are. So how do we make a decision on something that I know for a fact isn't going to work, didn't work, and that we need to involve all the unions, not just unions, all the employees. We are going to lose people, not just in the unions, clear across the board for trying to do something like this. Why do we have to rush into this? We've done all the mask mandates. We know that we're going to have another report in December. Why all of a sudden do we have to hurry up and make this decision and try to make some of these people's lives miserable? I'm very disappointed that we didn't sit down with them before we put something out. Instead of putting something out and calling them and say, well, here's what we're going to do. We have an obligation to sit down with our union membership to discuss these issues and to make sure they agree. And Mr. Dink, I'm extremely disappointed in you.
If I may, Commissioner, I said that Lyuna said that they did not sign the LOU, that they took the position that an LOU was not required, but that they supported our program. And every employee who was sitting at that table said, yeah, tell us about when we're going to get paid our $400.
Right.
They were excited about it.
Ryan.
Yeah, you weren't in the room. They were excited.
You've already done something during negotiations you shouldn't have done, and here you are.
Come on.
Come on.
Mike, I was there. That's exactly what happened.
And I don't work for you. I went in there and they said they did not sign it. They understood what you were showing them, but they did not sign it.
I never
There's
said
a
they
difference
signed
between
it.
understanding what let me finish. They understand what you showed them, but they didn't sign it. There's a huge difference.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to make the two statements that I did on Monday night. The first one, that we've been throwing around the acronym for a while, the LOU. Why weren't we given a copy for review? If we are the ones, we see their contracts, the union contracts, why weren't we given an option to review, or in our agenda packet, seeing the letter that was given to the unions? So that is my first question to staff. Why weren't we given a copy to review?
Commissioner, Doug Bach, County Administrator. I guess we could move to that. I don't know that we have ever issued out copies of LOs used to the commissioners in advance of final documents that have come forward for signature. So that would be a change of process, not that we couldn't do it, but that is not a common practice that we've done for the past 30-some years that I've been around.
And I understand that's not a common practice, but with something this contentious, I think it was something necessary that should have happened, especially we all know since last year, COVID has been a very contentious political issue, not for just us, but around the country and around the world. And so it's just, I think it would have been helpful for us to see what the unions saw and what they were reading, so that maybe we could see why they're upset about it and for the reasoning. That's the only reason why I had that question of why we weren't given a copy. And my other question, not really a question, but more of a statement and a request that I made, and that I made to Misty altogether, is they said we have approximately 2,300 employees, but yet only 1,002, and please correct me if I wrote this number wrong. Please correct me if I wrote it wrong. 1,269 employees who are vaccinated. If we take, that's about 55%, approximate. That's not a definitive number of how many employees we have, but yet you're asking for $1 million, which is based off the 2,300. Only 55% of that, which is 550,000, would be used currently. So the request I asked was at the very end of this incentive program that the remainder of the ARPA money go back to its original account. We might not think that it's necessary, but this is precious money and we need to make sure we account for every dollar of that. And so that was something I had made a request to Misty about.
Commissioner, if I may, this is Misty Brown, Chief Counsel. So you did make the request, and after we had our discussion on Monday, we talked about the financial piece of how it will work. And it's my understanding that the money would not be taken out of the ARPA account until it was needed to actually pay an incentive. So it would stay in its account and be drawn down. So it wouldn't be moved out and go in another account. It would stay there. We would know by the end of the year how much money was actually necessary for the incentives. And then only that amount would be taken out of the ARPA allocation. So,
okay. Continue, sorry.
And I would just say too, on the 2,300, I believe that's an approximate number because it is always kind of ebbing and flowing a little bit from week to week on the exact number of employees that we have and temp employees.
Okay. And thank you for the explanation about how the money was going to flow. So thank you for that explanation. I just wanted to make sure, as I said, this is precious money, and I just want to make sure we account for every dollar that goes in or that goes out of that account. So thank you.
Commissioner Walters?
Yes, I support an incentive. I would like some information on how we came up with the $400 figure. It seems like it's significantly higher than any other incentive program that I have heard of. And I guess consistent with some of the other comments, I'm kind of surprised that we've already floated the idea of the $400 incentive to our employees before the commission even approved it. It kind of puts the commission in a very awkward position if we want to make any changes to that. Kind of boxes us into a corner. So it seems like that process isn't the best if you're sitting in a commissioner's chair. But I would like to understand how we came up with $400.
Commissioner Doug Bach, County Administrator, I'll try to address both your points. I mean, one, the floating of the idea out to the employees on a general nature came after we had moved forward and placed the item on the agenda when it was in public discussion. So at that point, many of our employees had already understood it. So while I was doing meetings during Employee Appreciation Week, the question would come about. Employees had heard something, so many times they don't have the understanding of what is being proposed. So I would go through that with them to make sure and explain it. So the other side of the equation is the one where we started over a month ago having discussions with the union leaders about potential ways to work through this with them, and what they found to be different input, which really did modify things in the way we advanced what's in front of you today. As far as the dollar figure, yes, I will agree. It is a number that is on the higher end of what I'm seeing for incentives that are out there. There are a few other public entities and some private that are up there in the $400 to $500 range. Most of the other entities that we're seeing are doing either like $50 from that, or they're doing paid days off. We'll see some that are or hours off, that they're giving employees off. If they're vaccinated, they get a half day off work or a day off work or something like that they're doing on that side of the equation. I think in coming up with this number and looking around and seeing, I guess, I felt like that what our employees have done, the work they've done over the past years, that the past year and dealing with COVID, that being on the upper end of this is something that they deserve. If we could do this and make it a payment that is one of the higher ones, based on the fact that they also, looking back, hadn't had raises in the last year or two. And not that this was meant to be a raise, it's meant to be incentive, but it should be enough to be meaningful, to make a difference to employees that have really been through a lot over the course of the last year and a half. And that's why I'm really promoting this to come forward, that I think our employees should get this incentive. Those that have stepped up and received the vaccine should get that money. And if this can entice a higher percentage of those, I would like to see our organization get to 80% and really demonstrate out to the rest of our community as residents here that this is a number we should be at. And that's where we ended up landing on the $400 for the incentive and then the $100 booster.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. Thank you, Administrator, for your explanation. I had a question similar to the one Commissioner Walters raised about the amount of the money. I would anticipate getting questions maybe from members of the public where the incentives are on the lower end, the $50 gift cards and that type of thing, to encourage people to get vaccinations. So it might be a bit of a challenge to explain why the proposal here is $400. And I did hear your explanation. I'd be curious as to what it might cost the UG overall if you did something like $100 and several hours off. Maybe it would amount to the same amount of money, but as Commissioner Ramirez mentioned also, that's a lot of money from ARPA, and we just had a discussion tonight about goals for ARPA money. So I'm giving this a lot of thought about the amount. I appreciate what our employees have done, as you said, to be in a position to serve the public. One consideration is that they may be exposed more than the average citizen in the course of just trying to serve the public. So that is something to consider as well. But that is the misgiving that I just had about the amount. With regard to the unions, are the LOUs basically the same language that is in the packet that we have reviewed tonight, with just some other prefatory language that's always in LOUs? Is this really the same thing that was presented to the unions?
So, Commissioner, it's Doug Bach, County Administrator. I'm going to start with the first question, then I'll ask Mr. Dink to answer the question about the LOUs. So if you change this amount to $100 in a total, you'd be talking about around $200,000 probably in cash coming out at once. And then a comparable, if we were to do, let's say about a half a day off, the approximate out-of-pocket that we would have in terms of typical overtime. And that's always a difficult one to measure for our employees. If we don't pay overtime, that'll just be a shift in work to what they're doing. But knowing what it does when we do a day off, this would be about a $250,000 figure, just estimating based on knowing what it is if we were to issue a day away from our employees. I know that cost is over $500,000. So about $350,000 approximately is what we'd end up paying. The 200 would be eligible from ARPA. I don't know that the days off would be, or the hours off. Mr. Dink, would you answer the question on the LOI?
Sure. So there are, in essence, 5 substantive paragraphs. Paragraph 1 says that the COVID plan we put together is applicable to the bargaining unit. Paragraph 2 is what I alluded to earlier, that the union reserves the right to grieve any discipline given to any member of the bargaining unit for alleged non-compliance with the COVID plan. Paragraph 3, this is what has been in place since the beginning of the pandemic. And it says the isolation and quarantine provisions of the plan may be unilaterally changed by the unified government based upon the direction from the health department. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the health department has provided direction on that. Paragraph 4, the unified government may unilaterally elect to temporarily or permanently cease the testing provisions of the plan at any time and for any reason, including but not limited to the availability of testing, the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, or the availability of funding. So, for example, if we get to a place where we were this summer and national COVID cases are down to 5,000, we wanted to reserve the right not to have to expend a bunch of money on testing and be bound by what's in the testing policy if the demographics and the data show that it's no longer necessary. And then, of course, if we no longer get reimbursement from FEMA, that is something that we wanted the opportunity to pull back on the testing. And the last one, and this last one actually is something that came at the request of some of the unions, but we added a provision that the unified government could change the COVID-19 test that was being administered, provided that the substitute test must have received authorization from the USDA. We added this piece in response to comments from the union. The unions wanted to see a confirmatory test, and specifically FOP and Lodge 40 brought that up, that if an employee believes that they have a false positive, that they would have an opportunity to go get a confirmatory test. So we rolled that into the policy based upon their feedback. And the LOU says, if we're going to do the confirmatory test, then it would be done by the health department through a nasal swab. That is, in essence, what the LOU says. So on that last point, number 5, we just met with Fire yesterday. They wanted us to, explore these rapid tests. And so that paragraph 5 would, in essence, if rapid tests become widely available right now, their availability is very limited. My understanding is KDHE sent their supply to school districts. But if we get take-home tests, rapid tests, we want the ability to transition to those so that to make it easier for the employee and for everybody involved. So those are the basic terms of the LOU.
And Mr. Dink, the same LOU was issued out to all the different unions to start with, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make Commissioner Walters brought up a very, very good point. Going through and hearing all of this conversation and thinking about everything, our hands are kind of tied because now the employees know the number and amount of the incentive. We can't change that. We can't take that away because employees already know about it. The process should have been, instead of, because I know, Mr. Bach, you called me and you presented the incentive package to me, but that should have been to us as a whole before it was told to anything was told to the employees. We should have had that discussion as a governing body to decide what and how much that amount should have been and what that COVID mitigation should have looked like. Because now, again, I feel our hands are tied. If we take the incentive package out, we look like the bad guy. If we lower the incentive, we look like the bad guy. So moving forward, before there's any employee incentive pertaining to COVID or anything, come to us as a governing body as a whole, not individually.
If I may, commissioners, this might add some additional framework, at least around the unionized discussions. We have communicated to the bargaining units that whatever we negotiate, I mean, you know, it's a tough position we're in because Commissioner Kane wants us to go negotiate with the unions and come back with full agreements to the commission, right? And that the unions don't want to be surprised. And then some of you don't want us talking to the employees without receiving prior approval, but to do a full, get full approval from the commission, we would have had to have rolled out a plan without approaching any of the unions prior. So we did preference our discussions with the collective, with the unions that, hey, this is what we're proposing, but we do ultimately have to get commission approval for it. And so we were just trying to walk that tightrope.
And Mr. Dink, I didn't say for staff to get approval. I asked for guidance. That's what we provide, is guidance, not approval. And that's what I meant. So I ask that you not take my words out of account.
Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you, Mayor. Listening to the discussion, seems like a number of us have difference of opinions on what we want to do here. And it seems like the employee portion as well as the bargaining committee portions are much questioned. I guess my question is, why did we feel we had to fast track this evening when we had an opportunity to continue to work through this? I might suggest that the message is out there, the communication's out there, the limit is out there, that we might consider postponing this until the next full meeting.
Mr. Bach, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Our timing to move forward at this time is based on where we are with the spread of COVID. I think we're starting to see some improvement in our numbers, though I will say as we went through last summer, and I think you would hear that from the health department and our medical officers, that in June of last summer, we started to see numbers drop. We let off the pedal a little bit, and look what happened across the whole country. We started to see the spread. You all took action in August to put masks back on everyone. And then a few weeks later, we started to see some drop off from that. As we see that start to go down and we look ahead to the winter months, the potential flu coming in, the confusion of whether people have flu or COVID coming about, we thought to be aggressive about an approach like this, to come out and give employees an encouragement to go forward and get a vaccine now within the next 60 days. Could be something to really motivate them, make an impact, and you know, kind of put a finite date to it. Say, okay, if we'll move forward by this time frame, we can get this many people vaccinated, and also, you know, the timing of the incentive to come out, you know, in November, late November to December, also seemed like an enticement too, to help encourage employees to move forward with it. But really the timing of that to get the vaccine in the arms and start making a difference before we hit the winter months now. And, you know, and maybe the federal government will come forward with something that forces our hand in regard to the vaccination and the way the president has released things, and that could change or how it's dealt. But I believe now this is a time that we can use the carrot to encourage our employees to get vaccinated, and that's why I'm rolling it out this way.
All right. Misty, would you put Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to state my support for the incentive program at the current level proposed. And I would like to eliminate the testing component incentives for employees to get vaccinated, and no testing would be what I can support.
Commissioner Kane,
I think that's a great idea, and I would second that motion. Thank you, Mayor.
any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, could
Commissioner
Commissioner
Townsend.
Bynum
Sorry,
repeat? the
Commissioner
motion?
Townsend. Commissioner Townsend,
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Townsend, District 1. For clarity again, Mr. Administrator, if we were going to look at, say, $200 cash incentive, I do support an incentive. Again, I was just struck by the amount. And say 4 hours off for employees, what would that run? I guess I'm looking at, under the current proposed monetary incentive, I think I heard the number was $1 million. If we gave as an incentive offer $200 and say 4 hours off, are we going to be under $1 million with that type of incentive?
You're 4 hours off over the time, and that could vary. And that could vary based on when someone takes that time off. So it would be spread over different years, but the 4 hours off is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of around $250,000 in offsetting overtime based on the number I know it is if we were to just award a day off, which is, I believe that number is around $535,000, if I remember correctly, is our estimated overtime pay. So we go back, we break that down to the areas where we think that causes that. So I'm going to give you the rough estimate of around $200,000 to $250,000 in overtime cost. And then a $200 direct award is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of, that's going to be about $450,000, I believe would be the number. So you're probably looking at an out of pocket somewhere through this of around $650,000 if you went that way.
With the combination of a monetary incentive and 4 hours off,
Yes,
that would be about 650,000.
I believe that's correct.
This is a ballpark.
And I'm doing this number on the fly, Commissioner,
Sure.
but I think I'm coming in fairly close to where the numbers would be. You often think the 4 hours off don't really equate to much, and we'd be able to spread those over time, but time off when it comes in blocks like that typically requires overtime to come back over a certain number of our employee areas.
Oh, okay. All right. I do support a testing component. People have the right to decide if they're going to get the vaccine or not. I would hope that they would. But again, this whole plan is to promote safety of our employees and the public. So I would support a testing component. Thank you.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Commissioner Bynum. I definitely support the incentive to get vaccinated. I think it should be a robust incentive so that we get the maximum participation out of our employee base as we can. I am okay with, I wish that we had a testing component, but I am fine with not having one as long as we have a robust incentive for vaccination. And I would just say that while it's enticing to think about a lower monetary incentive and some other aspect like time off, that comes with administrative overheads, it comes with potential overtime, overhead. And so it is definitely potentially even more costly to us as an organization. Since this is an ARPA reimbursable expense, I support the incentive as proposed and am fine with no testing.
Thank you. All right, we do have a motion and a second. Roll call, please. And let's be clear about what the motion is. Commissioner Bynum.
Yes, Mayor, my motion is $400 incentive for vaccination and no testing as our COVID-19 mitigation plan.
May I clarify, Commissioner, does that also include the booster or is that not part of it?
Yes, absolutely include the
$100.
incentive for the booster. Thank you.
And a second again, Commissioner Mike Kane.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
No.
McKiernan.
Aye.
The vote is 8-1. The motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners.
That moves us to a resolution approving the third amendment to Legends West Lawn Development Agreement. The item was heard last Monday by the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee. The committee voted unanimously to approve and fast track to tonight's commission meeting. I'd ask Commissioner Bynum, who chaired the meeting, to add anything.
Thank you, Mayor. We did unanimously approve it and move it forward. However, it was in a committee where it would not normally be due to timing. And so I do appreciate if we can have the full commission discuss. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bach?
Thank you, Mayor. The item coming for you this evening is one that's done in relationship to a project that's been over time. What we have is a community improvement district that was done over the Legends area some years ago. And with that, there was a provision that required the redevelopment or the improvement of the space to the north of the baseball stadium. That has not been done. And by that, within the terms of the agreement, it requires us to hold or to put the developer in default, which by holding the default, we held back on some of the CID payments. The developer has come forward to ask that we allow them to move forward. We put an amended agreement in front, it's in front of the commission. It states that the developer will get in excess of another year, basically through 2022 into the end of November, I believe, of next year or December, Patrick, that they'll be able to either redevelop the property or start redevelopment on the property, or they would improve it as a parking space. And if they're not able to do that, then there is a $500,000 penalty, which the developer would have to pay. I have both Patrick Waters and Todd LaSala here who can speak to this point in greater detail. And I would ask either of you if you'd like to clarify any points that I may have skipped over in that quick summary that I just did.
I think you covered everything from our end. I'll let Todd speak.
Yeah, I would only say a quick word. Commissioners, this is Todd LaSala, outside counsel. Just a quick word or two about why we're kind of in this spot tonight. The bond documents really require us to release the CID money that the trustee is holding, and it can only sit in the trustee's account for a certain amount of time. And frankly, we have to make a decision right now about what's going to happen with that money by the end of the week. We would otherwise be happy to continue to hold that CID money and wait for this paving obligation to get taken care of or something different to happen with this lot. But our bond documents really say that by the end of this week, we have to decide one way or another. You either disperse that money to the developer or it gets swept from the bond account and used to redeem bonds early. So consequently, the solution we've come to here is that we will disperse that bond money to the developer now, and we're going to extend the deadline on the paving obligation until next November. And frankly, you're letting go of that money we've been holding hostage, but the developer is offering a contractual commitment that if he doesn't do one of two things by November of 22, he owes us $500,000 in liquidated damages. And the two choices by November of next year are either pave this lot or come up with a redevelopment plan that you, the commission, would approve by November of 22. So I'll stop there.
I guess I want to add to this that there are already 2 opportunities for development of that lot that really the developer is asking not to pave the lot at this time because it makes no sense to pave the lot, have someone purchase it and redevelop it differently, have to rip that lot out. So there's a very practical reason why this request was being made. And so as Todd explained, there are some, clawbacks for us on this or protections for us on this. But again, the idea is let's not pave the lot. And then there are 2 real potential developers for that particular lot that would preclude the need of the lot in the first place. Commissioner Bynum.
Mayor, I would add that Mr. Lowe is on the call and he could explain some of those potential developments if you would like the commission to hear this.
Sure, Mr. Lowe.
I think he'll need to be promoted. He's on the attendee list.
He's been promoted.
State your name and city of residency, please.
Dan Lowe, 4717 Central Street, Kansas City, Missouri. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Yes, I did want to mention, as the mayor indicated, when the Brandmeier family purchased the ball team, they came to us and asked very early in their ownership of the team if we would be willing to work with them to develop this outfield area into an entertainment district. I think some on the commission have perhaps seen those plans, but I know that there is certainly an intention of sharing these plans with the entire commission in the very near future. They asked, because they are not selling out games in a manner that would require the use of this area for parking, that we not pave that area simply because it would require them to remove the paving when they develop the lot. At the same time, we have a new sit-down restaurant that intends to work with the Brandmeiers to incorporate into that entertainment district that is prepared to proceed with the development of their area of that parcel as well. So we just felt that spending the money to pave the parcel when it would only be ripped out to be redeveloped didn't make common sense. We appreciate the mayor, Doug, and Todd's willingness to work with us here to hold off on the payment of that lot, and we very willingly accept the liquidated damages provision of the new amendment, because we're very confident that both parties intend to develop well before next November. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. I failed to communicate earlier that the standing committee was enthusiastic about the opportunity to see a potential redevelopment of the lot, and I should have shared that earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I would have, the amount of money in the CID that we're releasing, do we have a total how much that is?
Commissioners, this is Todd LaSala. I believe that number is just north of $700,000, a little more than $700,000.
Thank you. And do we have to distribute that all in one lump sum?
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct. All of that money needs to leave that account by the end of this week. And by the way, Mr. Lowe, the developer, have spent that money on the West Lawn project and submitted cost certifications. We've looked at those costs, confirmed those costs. And so there are expenses that match that amount of money that we would be releasing.
Well, thank you for that. And I think it's so transparent that the public hear that, so that they understand that the CID is not rewarding a developer for not being able to complete a project because of agreements with another owner. I guess my comment would be, we're sure that the 500,000 would be available. The potential to pay that 500,000 would come from either the sale of the property to, I'm assuming Brandmeier or to another developer.
Yeah, we would really, Commissioner, we'd have a claim against Mr. Lowe. He has contractually agreed to pay that money as liquidated damages. We've also included provisions in the agreement about interest payments. If we demanded that money, if for some reason he doesn't meet his obligations by the deadline, we demand that money and he doesn't pay us immediately. It's a very short time frame. We start collecting interest on that $500,000 until he does pay. So there is the possibility we would have to chase him for it, but if and to the extent it took time to recover it, the contract says that we get interest while we're waiting for it.
I might also note, the Commissioner, that we've spent over $5 million redeveloping the west end of the Legends when we removed T-Rex and we replaced the concrete with grass, fixed all of the rust on the undercarriage of the Dave and Buster's walkway. Our expenses exceeded $5 million. CID didn't cover the whole expense.
Thank you for that explanation, Mr. Lowe.
Commissioner McKiernan?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Lowe, I said this to your representative at the standing committee meeting, and I'll say it to you. I think the redevelopment of the West Lawn area has been spectacular. When I go out to shop at the Legends, I have no problem releasing this money from the CID for the purpose of reimbursing that bit of the construction. And I am confident that we will have a development on the previous or in the currently unfinished space next to Legends Field before the deadline comes and goes.
I really appreciate that, and I'll pass that along to the team. Thank you.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
This is Commissioner McKiernan, District 2, move to approve as submitted.
Ramirez, second.
Motion is second. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. We're almost there.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That concludes the portion of our regular meeting. We are adjourned in that capacity. I now call us back to order as the Land Bank Board of Trustees. Does any member of the Commission or County Administrator wish to set aside any item on the Land Bank consent agenda at the risk of your life? If an item is not set aside, all items on the consent agenda will be voted on by one vote.
Commissioner Mike Kane, move for approval.
Second.
Yay, Commissioner King. Yay, Commissioner. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Ramirez,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Kane,
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook,
Aye.
Bynum,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting. We are adjourned.